2023 Bethel Board of Education regular meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Here.
Mrs. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, and justice for all.
Okay, we're on number 2, agenda and minutes. The first item is approval of the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, I do want to ask the board members and administration if we have any additions.
Madam President, members of the board, I have two items I need to remove from the agenda. First is 7C, which is musicians and accompanists. And then also under 9 recommendations, business, item A, which is the overnight extended student trips. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items we need to add?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Thank you, Mr. King. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. We have 2 special presentations this evening. The first will be by the YMCA before and after care, and the second will be a gifted services presentation. Members of the YMCA, when you present, please make sure to use the mic and turn it on. If you aren't mic'd, you don't get recorded. Thank you.
Did I turn it on? I think it's on. Is it on now? Testing?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Vicki Daniels. I'm the Executive Director of Child Care Services for the YMCA. And this is Kim Bond. She's a Senior Child Care Services Director and would be overseeing this proposed program. We're really excited to share this opportunity. We currently do have 14 Bethel children in our program. We just serve them at the Huber Heights YMCA. We pick them up every day from school, and we serve them at our Y. So it's a really neat program. We'd like to expand it out into the overall grouping to the district. And so I just want to share a little bit about our program. First and foremost, we are in the community. The YMCA is in your community. We've been in the Miami Valley since 1858. So we've been here a long time. We don't plan on going anywhere. And we're excited about the opportunity to serve Bethel schools in another capacity. So our main goal would be to provide a safe and nurturing environment that can provide children social, emotional growth opportunities. And so that's a lot of what we do with them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. In particular, we have a lot of different programs that we offer within the YMCA school program, and we call them dosages. So we do like academic enrichment, which every day we offer homework assistance, tutoring. We do math and reading with them. We also do other programming. We do have opportunities to do the Y Club, which would be, with permission, of course, from parents, taking them back and doing opportunities at the Y, like swimming and using the other programs that are there, like karate and other things. So it's kind of a neat program. I don't want to take too much time. The program would be offered from 6:30 in the morning until the beginning of school, and then again at the end of the school day until 6 o'clock p.m. What we would be offering to the district is 2 models. You could either choose a flat rate option, or you can choose the hourly option, and parents are allowed to switch one time a semester what option works best for them. A lot of times they'll try one option or the other. If parents choose the flat rate option, then if they are military or if they're a first responder, whether it's police or EMT or a YMCA member, there's a lot of different discounts available for families. There's also the hourly program, which is $8 an hour. That is not available for a discount because typically that's just an hour for many families. So it's any part of an hour is $8 an hour. The other thing that we do that's really nice, let's say that you've dropped your children off at 6:30 in the morning and school goes into a delay, we will stay there with the children so that you don't have to come and pick them up or anything like that. They would still be with us until school starts. If school turns into a cancellation, then if you've already signed up for what we call calamity care, then your child would just stay with us. If you didn't sign up because you got grandma or somebody at home that can watch them, you would come and pick them up and take them, to grandma's house or whoever that's going to take care of them. So it's a nice, convenient option. Another thing is if school's early release, let's say like professional development day for the teachers, and you're like, oh no, what am I gonna do? Then you also have the option to sign them up for those kinds of what we call calamities as well, or professional development days. So again, there's another care option for you. If somebody chooses not to be enrolled, then that's what we call emergency care. And let's say that you're like, oh no, there's no way I can get there. You would call the school and let them know, hey, I'm not going to be able to pick Josiah up. I'm going to need a little bit of extra help. Is there any way he can stay for emergency care today? That way it's like an extra, family member. Think of the Y as an extra family member that's there to help you in case you have that, that gap. Okay? A typical day, we basically, in the mornings, they sign in. The first thing they do is wash hands. We always ask parents to please help us make sure they wash their hands before they come in. And then we do different activities, rotations in the morning. Most of the activity is really in the afternoon when they come back to us because we have them for a lot longer. But both times we do offer different activities, a lot of arts and crafts and stuff, depending on the time of day. Sometimes when they come in the morning, all they want to do is just come in there and relax. They don't want to be forced to do anything in the morning. After school, they want to get what I call their zoomies out. So we usually take them to the gym, let them run around, or we take them outside, or we take them on the playground and let them get their zoomies out, and then we start to do other enrichment activities with them. So there's lots of different ways that we keep your children busy and in a positive manner. So, like I said, I shared a little bit about the discounts. Here's something else that's nice. If you're a family or you know of a family that's maybe struggling financially, needs some additional assistance, the YMCA program does accept what's called public funds. And so families that are eligible, we provide that information to them, and they can go and get with the state of Ohio and see if they qualify for an additional discount. Sometimes it can be, they might have a copay. They can sometimes even have a zero copay, meaning that they get that free, and that's determined between them and the state of Ohio. So we do accept public funds. The other thing is, if you're stuck in the middle, a lot of times I say, on this hand, there's folks can get public assistance. On this end, folks can pay the full fee. So it's the folks in the middle, those of us that are mostly in this room, where we're like, well, I don't make too much to qualify for this. I don't make enough to do this. So the cool thing is the YMCA also has scholarships available. So if there's a need, you can apply that way. So this program is basically built to make it, like I said, a friend of your family in a way, and then to help you afford the fees. This is not something that we want to be, where you're not able to afford. So we don't turn people away for their inability to pay. We do turn people away if they don't pay whatever the agreed thing is, but I want you to know our goal is to help any family that wants to participate to be in this program, okay? I also want to end with one thing, and that is that we have minimal closures. So not only are we convenient for delay days and early release and professional development days, but we have minimal closures. What we do is we do a joint calendar with the district, and we sit down and we figure out, okay, what are those days? So you as a parent can put the calendar on your refrigerator, and you will know ahead of time what days, that we would be closed. And so I can count, it's a small handful of days that we would actually be closed. Okay? So the YMCA's goal is to be very reliable to help you out. All right? All right. Any questions? Please know that we do ask families to fill out a packet, and the YMCA part is about like this, which is like 1 page maybe, and the stuff that we have to fill out for the state of Ohio is like a packet like this. So I'm just apologizing in advance if you decide to participate in the program. It's not the YMCA that wants 50 pages from you. It's the state guidelines. So, all right.
Questions?
Guys are letting me off easy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Kim. YMCA. Special thanks to both our elementary principals, Ms. Jones and Mrs. Schock, for bringing this all together for our families. I think it's going to be a great thing for us.
I think we had looked at this right before COVID happened, and then
Yeah.
it kind of fell apart,
Yeah.
so we're really excited to have you with us. Mrs. Schock.
Yeah.
Mrs. Schock is our K-1 principal and our gifted coordinator.
Yes, so I am here tonight to talk about our gifted services and what those look like in the district this year. So we previously contracted this through the ESC, and now it is in-house here at Bethel. So our elementary service model, we cluster together our students, kindergarten through 2nd grade, who are gifted. Their teacher has up to, they have to earn 60 hours in PD for gifted, and the students will be clustered together in the same classroom at that grade level with the teacher with the specialized training. Our 3rd grade students that are gifted in reading are clustered together for the most part with Mrs. Livesey, who's working on her gifted training. And then we do have a gifted intervention specialist this year, Mrs. Sampson, who is teaching a specific math class at 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. And then she also has a specific gifted class for 4th grade language arts and 5th grade language arts. Our middle school model, all students who are gifted in reading, language arts, or our superior COG are in the same language arts class. We also have an advanced math 6 class that is, it compacts the content and curriculum from both 6th and 7th grade all into their 6th grade year. Those students then move on to advanced math 7 as 7th graders, which is covering the 8th grade material. And finally, as 8th graders, they do take Algebra 1. So that's our current pathway at the middle school. Knowing our new direction that we're taking at the elementary with our gifted intervention specialists and the students covering content at a quicker pace, these math classes, as time goes on, our current 3rd and 4th graders will likely potentially be ready for algebra before 8th grade, potentially at 7th grade, like other districts are offering around us. Our high school service model, we offer AP courses, College Credit Plus, honors classes, and then as well as the regular classroom with cluster grouping. That cluster grouping is important because it puts the students together, and when we hire teachers, they don't have their College Credit Plus accreditation, we can still get credit for their gifted services by clustering them together in the same classroom. For identification, in kindergarten and 1st grade, those things typically come from the teacher or by parent request to me, the gifted coordinator. In 2nd through 8th grade, students take an iReady diagnostic in the fall, winter, and spring. If they score in the 95th percentile or above, that does qualify them as gifted in either math or reading. Once identified, always identified. It does not go away. The COGAT is administered to all of our 2nd and 4th graders looking for superior cognitive ability. And then, as always, referrals can be submitted from parents to me by email if they should choose, or they can write a letter into the elementary office. Our current students that are identified or served, across the district, we have 280 identified students, K-12, and 95% of them are receiving gifted services. Where it gets a little tricky, with the iReady diagnostic being offered in fall, winter, spring, students are already placed in classes, and then they might get a gifted identification. It can be difficult to change their class placement mid-year. We tried to do what we could at the beginning of the year, and for the most part, we're successful, but mid-year, it's difficult to do that. Also, our high school students that attend the MVCTC, those students are completely removed from our gifted data by ODE since they're attending off-site for their education. When we look at the 2021-2022 report card for gifted progress, that was met, as well as the gifted performance index. Last year, we did not meet for identification and services. We're now, this year, serving 95% of our students, so that should not be a problem to meet. In the past, at the elementary level, in the 3rd through 6th grade, we were only serving our students with superior cognitive abilities. We weren't necessarily serving those students with specific math or reading identification, and now we are doing that. So just a pie graph or a way of looking at the report card. If you look up there, it shows you identified and served students, as well as those that are identified and not served, and those that are not identified. So our gifted population is a small portion of our overall student body. At the K2 level this year, we have 18 total students, and 17 of them are being served. So that portion that's not being served will get even smaller this year. For 3-6, we have 119 total students, and 113 of them are being served. And then at the 7-8 level, there are 68 total students, with 66 of them being served. And at the 9-12 level, 73 total. 62 of them count for the district since we removed the MVCTC students, and 58 of them are served. At the winter, with our winter diagnostic, we had 13 new elementary students qualify for gifted services and 2 at the middle school level. When we look at changes that ODE has made for this year's report card, they are really emphasizing the importance of early identification. They are giving us 15 points for identifying our kindergarten through 2nd grade students early and recognizing that they have specific needs for their education. And as you can see, then across 3 through 12, that combined is worth another 15 points. What other districts are doing, the iReady diagnostic identifies our student in 2nd through 8th grade, but nothing for kindergarten and 1st. So a lot of the districts around us are kind of using iReady as a screener for kindergarten and 1st grade. Any student scoring within that 90th percentile, we would test them for a specific math or reading identification. That's something where the district would have to purchase the Terra Nova for both math and reading in order to do that in the future if we should so choose to go that route. Mrs. Sampson is our gifted intervention specialist. She could not be here tonight, but she put together a couple of slides for her classes. For her gifted math that she has, class in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they use a spiral review that keeps them current on grade level skills, and they will all work on completing their 8 units at their current grade level, including optional project-based lessons before moving on to the next level. Currently in 3rd grade, they have finished all 8 of their math units, and they are working on the 4th grade math curriculum. 4th grade is on the 6th out of 9 units, and the 5th grade has finished 6 of the 8 grade level units, and they've completed 1 6th grade unit at this point in time. She's showing here her data from iReady. In 3rd grade, at the start of the year, 42% of her students were on or above grade level. Now, mid-year, she has 100% of them above grade level, so showing that she is certainly meeting their needs. For 4th graders, 67% of them were on or above grade level in math, and now mid-year, we have 100% performing above. And for 5th grade, she started out with 41% on, 53% above level, and now mid-year she has 6% of them on level and 94% above. Then lastly, she does have language arts classes for 4th and 5th grade. With the time constraints, we do have her teaching 5 separate classes. We could not fit in a 6th with that 3rd grade language arts, so that's why it's just 4th and 5th. She is using our Wit and Wisdom curriculum like the other grade levels. It is geared towards her higher level learners, so they're doing well with that. She is on module 3 with both of her grade levels, and puts a good amount of emphasis on vocabulary and roots, prefixes and suffixes. Also, the students are able to research background knowledge behind each novel more extensively than they would be in the regular classroom. And her data, lastly, for language arts. In 4th grade, at the start of the year, 85% of them were on or above grade level. Now mid-year, she has 100% on or above. And then for 5th grade, 61% were on or above grade level, and she now has 83% on or above grade level. Questions that you have about our gifted services? Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, okay.
So I'll talk really loud, maybe, and then people can hear. So my question is, we talked about the identified and the one receiving service and the percentage of those identified but not receiving services. What are the barriers that will keep us from having 100% of those identified receiving services?
So at the elementary level, like we talked about, 2nd through 8th grade, once they take that iReady diagnostic, we have new students who qualify for gifted services. So at the beginning of the year, when we have them placed in classrooms, they maybe wouldn't have a gifted identification. We take that test in September, they take it again in January and again in May. We'll get new students that qualify that may not already be clustered with other students. And it may not make sense to move them mid-year for various reasons. When you look at the high school level specifically, you might have some students who have a gifted math or reading ID that are no longer following that math pathway. And so what we can do moving forward is ensuring that those students are clustered with other gifted students that are maybe taking, a typical 9th grade or 10th grade math class.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question.
Yes.
I think you touched on it, but I'm just going to ask it maybe in a different way. Is there a path for math students to stay on the advanced math class level if they don't test as gifted?
Sure. So in 6th grade, there is an advanced 6th grade option. We look at 3 criteria. You have to meet 2 of those 3 to be an advanced math 6. One would be having a gifted ID, which you may or may not have. The second is any student in the 80th percentile or above in the iReady diagnostic. They would earn one of the points towards that. And then lastly, we give a placement test to any student in that 80th percentile. I gave them a placement test last spring, and looking at that collaboratively at the data, we look at a cut score for that. So yes, we certainly do have students in Advanced Math 6 this year who are not gifted.
Thank you.
That gives them the pathway. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Schock.
Thanks.
Okay, public participation. Before we start that, I do want to mention something that I feel really strongly about. I pulled up the Bethel communication plan, and let me see if I can find it on the website here. If you go to search, put in who to contact, it's the first link. And I printed copies for anyone who wants to take it, but kind of tells you who to go to if you're having issues so that we all follow a process. The board is typically the last place you should be going. You should have contact with the superintendent first, and teachers and staff members, so I just wanted to point that out. We have 4 people for public comments. 2 of those are on the calendar, and I'm not sure if those people realize, but the calendar was updated today. So I don't know if you want to give your feedback before Mr. Crispin gives his presentation on the calendar or after. I'll ask you when I call your name. First on the agenda is Mrs. Kiplinger.
So one of my comments is also on the calendar since it is on the agenda. So I have not seen the updated one, so bear that in mind. But I did want to point out that whoever did the calendar in the current format really should be asked to put it in a standard format so it is easier to read. It was difficult for me to follow. I would say that I think starting school the last day of the fair should be a no-go. Let alone asking the teachers to start their year the week of the fair, regardless if they have kids in 4-H or other fair activities or not. The fair is a family event. It only comes around once a year, and to intentionally start the school year that week is kind of a slap in the face to not only the staff and teachers, but the community members as well. I also think that adding additional 10 minutes to the school day for the sake of test scores is disappointing. It's disappointing because it doesn't really take into account other things that can be done to increase test scores that don't add anything else to the school day, such as eliminating social emotional learning and using that time to focus on core subjects, allowing teachers to have their planning period so they actually have time to take a moment and decompress during the school day, making Bethel a safe place for all students, because when students feel safe, they learn more. Having principals handle behavior. It is, the calendar is an agenda item. Well, the calendar is on the agenda, and the increase of the school day is part of that. It was listed as the number of hours.
Not increasing the hours of the day, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. It's not listed as an agenda item. That's all I was trying to clarify.
All right. Students and parents who are respectful of by the teachers and the staff are respectful of each other. And let's remember that an employee who feels valued will do more. Our teachers are burned out because more and more is being asked, and this additional time is just another slap in the face. Let's reward our teachers with their hard work instead of piling more on. Also, another agenda item was the YMCA. I'm just confused as to why it's being housed at Bethel and not at the Y. If they have that program at the Y, I think it's available for all the folks within the community, and they should be able to take their kids there. I don't see it being needed here at the school. I did see that some teachers would be able to utilize that service with little to no cost. So I'm wondering if this is how you decide who gets that perk while others don't, and whether or not that would be a taxable event, since that is a service that is paid for by somebody. I don't know. On the enrollment, I would find it helpful if you could provide the month-over-month numbers and not just the year over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kiplinger. Mrs. Reese?
Good evening. So some of these are going to be a repeat of the work session because it was after everything had been reviewed. Excuse me. So one thing is the minutes from 112 and 126 mentioned there was an attachment, but there was no attachments available. So just hoping you can get those out there. Just looking for a little background information on the certificate of availability for the $75,000 nursing services when you get there. For all new hires and supplemental positions, it would be appreciated if you could add the job title, step info, if applicable, the effective dates, and the salary. There's some people listed as being added or hired, but it doesn't even say what their role would be. And the YMCA, a couple questions about that. I had the same comment after listening of why would it not stay at the YMCA since that's available now. And then last time at the work session, one thing that was mentioned was that there was an option, if it is here on site, that we can either pay, that they can pay rent, or that we can waive the rent, and they can stay and help us with lunch duty, playground duty, et cetera. So if you could just give an explanation of that, of how that would work, and then what happens, does it cost us then if we're not getting rent? Thank you very much for making the policies visible to us. Asked that last time, appreciate that. That you took off the agenda. I have a question about the consultant/substitute certified role. Is this a new position? I don't remember that being in the negotiated union agreement, so just wondering how that works if we add that, and at the $200 per day rate, and then how's the rate determined? How does all that happen if it's not in the contract? I had some calendar comments. I did see the new one. I definitely better, but it still starts the teachers, I think, on the last day of the fair. I also am against starting school during Fair Week. It's a last hurrah for many families. They camp up there. There's projects and shows animals. Sometimes it's siblings that do it. It's not always the kid. So, and sometimes it's just spending quality time with the family. So I hope that we don't start during the school week. And also, I think at the work session, you guys mentioned that it was going to start even earlier next year. So hopefully that will be fixed too. And then the last question on the agenda is, there's a facilities update, but there was no facilities committee meeting today, so I was just wondering what happened to those. That's my list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reese. I will ask Mrs. Babb and Mrs. Leskowicz, would you like to hear Mr. Crispin give the updates on the calendar, and I will let you make your comments before we vote, or would you like to give them now? Okay, Mrs. Babb? You'll wait. You want to go ahead now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Bethel is still a rural community despite the huge carriage trail housing boom that's occurred. The school should be promoting agriculture to the kids of this community. 4-H kids spend the majority of their summer preparing and looking forward to the week of the Miami County Fair, with the week immediately before fair time being extremely hectic. The fair is hot, busy, and exhausting, but the kids love it. The fair is not just for country kids. 4-H offers many projects that do not require an animal. I know that Girl Scouts have project entries in different events. Many families use it as a week to camp. I know for sure my daughter sleeps for days after the fair, and I almost never have a chance to gather all of her back to school needs, as well as I'm preparing for the fair week too. I look forward to the Monday and Tuesday before the first day of school to do those things. The horse kids especially are not permitted to remove their project animals until 6 p.m. on Thursday, which is the last day of the fair. And this is after they've been eventing all day long since 9 a.m. that day. And then it's a mad dash they have to clean their tack stall, clean the horse stall, and then haul out. I can't even imagine getting home that night and then preparing her for the first day of school. I heard that it was stated this district cannot accommodate 20 or so kids out of 1,900. Your community has been screaming this for a year and a half. You can't just pick and choose when to apply this logic.
Thank you, Mrs. Babb. Mi- Mrs. Leskowicz, please prompt me when we get to the point of the agenda, and I'll let you, or did you want to speak now? Okay, sure.
Good evening. Please disapprove the proposed calendar with respect to the school's start-stop dates and let us mirror last year's calendar. While change can be positive, this is one of those times status quo may be our best course of action. There's been a lot of discord over starting school during Fair Week. I understand Mr. Cripson's argument that you cannot please every family, and I understand the community's argument that starting after the fair disrupts family vacations and school tradition. What I don't understand is how do you justify the contention you are causing based solely on the fact you want to improve state test scores? Mr. Crispin explained to the board members we need to put our kids in a spot to be as successful on those state tests as can be. We need to look at how often can we put students and teachers in a classroom before high-stakes testing, and we need to get back to instructional time with kids to move the needle. I do not disagree classroom time with a teacher is important. I am just not 100% convinced we need more time in the classroom when I'm told many middle schoolers do not have enough time to eat their lunch. And our elementary kids have a short amount of time on the playground and breaks from screen time. What good is additional classroom time when they are not in the mindset to learn because they are hungry and tired? I know the state standardized tests are mandatory, and an argument can be made for and against them, but these tests put pressure on teachers to teach to the test rather than teach the skills. Teachers often incentivize students to do their best and take the test seriously by reducing the schoolwork and eliminating homework assignments. All of this takes time away from teaching students the skills they will actually use and need. Furthermore, standardized tests don't provide information in a timely manner. Test results aren't received until the end of the summer, which means teachers won't be able to use the results to help those students because they have already advanced to the next grade. As an alternative, could we focus more on data points such as NWEA, MAP, iReady, and DIBELS? Because many of these tests are given 2 to 3 times a year, we can measure student learning and progression throughout the school year. Do we try partnering with Wright State University, Learn to Earn, and the University of Dayton to participate in their high-dosage tutoring program? Ohio's Department of Education awarded these 3 institutions $637,000 to work with Dayton, Fairborn, and Huber Heights schools by providing at-risk students tutoring assistance to catch up on math and reading instruction lost during the pandemic. While this may not be the teacher-to-student classroom scenario Mr. Crispin is seeking, it certainly has to be beneficial to students. Here's the reality that no standardized state test data will show you. We have one Title I funded reading teacher who is basically there to get struggling readers through a guaranteed reading test. The demand for her is high, so the worst of the worst readers can get assistance, and the cutoff is 2nd grade. There's reading intervention for 3rd graders identified for retention, but those students must be on an IEP. There's no specialized instruction for dyslexic kids or kids who are not on track and not on an IEP. A parent shared with me she has a dyslexic child who struggled with sight words and learning how to read. He was not on track to pass the guaranteed reading test. Parent and teacher felt helpless, so his teacher sought help from our beekeeper program. The student was paired with a 6th grader who came to his classroom weekly for a tutoring session. Teachers are telling parents of struggling readers they should find a tutor for their elementary student to help them learn to read because there is nothing else the teacher can do. Perhaps some of that additional classroom time you are seeking for improving standardized tests could be used to offer instruction from an Orton-Gillingham certified teacher. Our teachers barely have enough time to get through a daily lesson because Google Translate consumes so much of their teaching time. Furthermore, there seems to be an increasing number of policy violations that directly impact the learning environment. Unfortunately, teachers are hesitant to enforce standards for fear of retaliation. As a result, the poor behavior and disruption continues. Additional classroom time is not going to fix this, nor is it going to help improve test scores. Lastly, I am curious how this intense focus on standardized testing fits into our strategic plan. The district was very methodical writing the plan to ensure it provided guidance on what the school wishes to achieve and how we will get there. Additionally, the district paid a lot of money and spent a lot of time consulting to get the strategic plan right. Every group from the community had an opportunity to provide input: students, parents, alumni, local businesses, teachers, and staff. Based on district stakeholders, they want Bethel to prepare students for careers and colleges. They want you to purposely embed essential life skills into our daily curriculum and ensure students are successful in a 21st century economy. With that said, I am not opposed to extending the school day if it gives all of our kids enough time to sit down and eat a healthy lunch. I'm not opposed to an extended school day if it allows our elementary students more time on the playground, which is really just an extended classroom. When I am opposed to making such a drastic change to our school calendar for the sake of improving state testing scores, especially when we have so many day-to-day learning issues that must be addressed first. So I respectfully request you to take a step back and see where else we can make changes to impact student learning without disturbing our school calendar. I truly believe if we fix some of our current issues mentioned, and you acknowledge the long-standing tradition Fair Week has on this community, higher test scores will naturally follow.
Thank you, Mrs. Leskovich. The other requests I have, as far as I know, will be at the end of the meeting. So, Mrs. Hageman, Treasurer's Report.
So item A is your monthly financial. Can we hear me now? Okay. So, monthly board reports, monthly financial reports for the board to review is for January 2023. Of course, we're a month in arrears. Bank rec for your review and approval. We did balance again this month, which is always a good thing. And then our cash flow for the month and what we've received versus what we've actually spent. So if you want to just keep going to the ones that are in yellow. So those are, the first column is our budget, second column's our actual spend, and then of course the third is the delta, the difference. We're running pretty close to what our estimates are, but we are looking at some increased cost or increased revenue, which is a good thing, in income taxes and unrestricted state grants, and a little bit in restricted state grants as well. So those are good things. We're actually getting more money than we anticipated. So hopefully that will continue. At the bottom, we've seen some increases in yellow in employee benefits and in purchase services and supplies and materials. As we all know, we had a big increase in enrollment this year that cost us that we needed to buy a lot of supplies and materials at the beginning of the year. So it has decreased as the months have gone on, but we'll keep an eye on that. So looking at it from a percentage standpoint, I was hoping that, we would receive 56.4% of all our revenue by now, and we've received 55.83, so pretty close. Then if we go down a little, I think I got that reversed. We've actually,
Yeah, we got in.
We got in 56.56 and or 56.4, and
Where
the
do you-
target was 55.83,
Okay,
right there.
sorry.
Okay, so, and then on expenditures, the target was 58.5, meaning that if we were following our budget the way I expected us to, we would have spent 58.56%, and we spent 59.42. So those percentages are pretty close. So we're going to keep an eye on them and make sure. So nothing that caused me any great pause. We do have about 5% more in income taxes that we received, which is good. Most districts are looking at reduced collections, so we're going to keep an eye on that. Hopefully we can continue getting more money than we anticipated so that we can, it comes out good for us. So these are just charts that explain, what those other reports are and where our money comes from. So right now, 44% of our money is coming from the state. I'm trying to read from way over here. Is that what that says, 44?
Yeah.
And so as the months go on, we'll see where that is. And so the Fair School Funding Plan really helped Bethel this year and last year. So we're hoping when the new biennium budget comes out, it'll continue to help us. So this is just showing that I expected 55.83% of the revenues, and we're currently at 56.4. So good news. So this is just a pie chart of where our money goes. Salaries, of course, is 48%, and fringe benefits is 21%. Typically, that runs between 70 and 80% in most school districts. So we're a little less, but that's because we also have a lot of staff that we hire through the ESC. So as we transition, that number has gone up considerably in the last couple months, so.
Well, and some of our employee costs are reflected in purchase services.
Correct,
Because
right.
we buy them through the ESC, so we're probably right in the,
We're probably about 70-80% currently because of the ESC is in the purchase service, so, because they're technically not Bethel employees, they're ESC employees, so, yeah. And this is just showing that 58.56 is the benchmark for expenditures, and we're at 59.42, so just a little more than I had hoped, but still less than 1% variance. Okay.
do you want me to show any of the rest of these?
Well, the cash summary report, if you want to just pull that up, this is just, I always say just, every fund that the district has, this shows the current cash balance. So when you look at the bank rec and you see the district has 17 million some odd dollars, most of that is going to be in your 070, which is your building fund for that wonderful building
we
we're,
can find it
we're
right here.
building over there. So, yeah, 12, yeah. So this is just a breakdown of where that money is currently. And then, of course, the investment reports will show where our COPS money is being invested right now. So if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to ask. If the money comes due and we have such a short time, meaning that it's been called, or short turnaround to the opening of our building, it's going into a high yield money market account to make it liquid for the district so we can continue to pay our vendors. Okay. Then the next, yes.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Oh, I thought somebody asked a question. Next thing is the detailed check register. This is just the checks cut for the month of January. Most of it's going to be payroll, as you can see. This is what we send up to the state and have available on their website. Shows all the checks that were cut in the month of January and all the activity there. So, next item is C, approval of certificate of availability. Certificate of availability, that means that the purchase order is dated after the invoice. So the treasurer has to say that, yes, we had the money available at the time services were rendered. My authority is capped at $3,000. This is for significantly more than that. I think it's $16,000 if we scroll down to the invoice. I can't remember. Yep, $16,601. We had a PO on for $75,000 that was supposed to cover, and services were needed more than we anticipated. So we ran out of money on that PO, and so we needed to enter a new PO for $75,000, and it's dated after this invoice. So because it's over my authority of $3,000, I need your authorization to pay it. These are skilled nursing services provided by Fidelity for students in need. So it's not something that we want to not pay. We certainly want to continue those services. And that's, amended certificate, appropriations, and what I call the APCOM report. An amended certificate, I don't know if you want to scroll through those, I wouldn't. This is just our estimate of resources, meaning our revenue estimates, right? And I say our, pretty much mine. And then the appropriations resolution is our estimate on budgets. You know, we had some items on our previous audits that said we had over appropriated, meaning that we had put too much money in a budget and it exceeded the amount of cash that we had on hand. So one of the things I told the auditors and this board that I would do is we have this APCOM report to show that we're not over appropriated, if you want to pull that up. It takes the available cash that we have at the beginning of the year, and then it looks at what our revenue estimates are and what our budget is. And as long as we have a positive, that's the appropriations. Yeah, the APCOM report. So it condenses those two reports. It takes the amended certificate, which is our revenues, and it adds it to our available cash, and then says we have this much appropriated for this year, and then we still have this much cash at the end. So it's a check for us as well as for me. I run it all the time to make sure that we have not over appropriated in any of these funds, because we want to make sure that we have enough cash to pay out of each fund for everything that we're doing.
So basically, this rightmost column, you want positive, and if it's
We
not,
want positive numbers there, yes. So, and you scroll down, you'll see 400s and 500s. Usually those are zeros because those are state and federal grants. So we want to make sure that we spend every dollar that we can. So, but that report just shows those two reports in one to make sure that we haven't over appropriated, and we've done as we told the auditors we would do, which is correct our problems from before. So,
thank you.
and that's pretty much all I have.
All right, may I have a motion to approve the treasurer's reports A, B, C, and D?
My motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. King?
So, looking at the reports and seeing that we had a $177,000 increase in benefits, do we foresee that to continue in the following quarters with that significant of an increase?
Yes. I'm going to keep a close eye on it, but yeah, we have a very nice insurance plan. It's pretty rich. So those that are eligible to take it have been taking it, and so our participation rate has gone up considerably more than I thought it would. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that, yes.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm eager to see next month's financials because property tax should be coming in.
I'm hoping, yes.
And we'll see if not in the February financials and the March financials, but I'm eager to see how our revenues come out because there's a couple buckets I'm expecting to pop back up, but we'll see.
Right, we're hoping that our TIF revenues, other operating revenues will go up, and that it's first half tax collections, but it's the second half of the year for me because my fiscal year is different, so I have to keep that straight. Oftentimes we get more collections after January and February than we do the second half, so we'll keep a close eye on it.
And just so the board knows, one of the reasons for that is if anybody pays their property tax in full, the first half of the year, we get that
Discounted.
immediately.
Mhm.
So we'll see. Are there any further questions for Mrs. Hageman? Okay, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes?
Mr. King?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hageman. Mr. Crispin, you are up for your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board members, Madam Treasurer. Let's go through important dates. We've added a few. That's why they're in green. As March is just around the corner, we have our art show next Thursday, the high school art show. I believe the start time is 5 o'clock, but you can double check me on the website. Friday, we have a blood drive here all day. Saturday evening, we have the father-daughter dance. Tuesday, March 7th, we have Music Boosters meeting. Friday, March 10th, music showcase evening, and then we're back here again Tuesday. Actually, we'll be in the media center for our next work session. So those are important upcoming dates. So update on personnel. I've provided the board with a personnel tracker just to keep you apprised of our movements, and already we've interviewed and approved voluntary transfers within the elementary, and so we're reposting to see if there are any other folks that are interested in moving, and once that's completed, those will go external, and we'll look to for external candidates. We are moving forward with, we met with a team of volunteer teachers from the middle school and went through 19 Yeah, we had 19 applicants for the middle school principal position, and I think you had a handful last year, so told. Either way, a lot of work to go through all the application materials, and the group narrowed it down to 7 candidates, and we'll schedule interviews for next Monday and Tuesday, and our goal is to have a recommendation then in March and know whether or not if we have to go for that / assistant principal position or not. So anyways, we will update that on occasion and share that with you so you can keep track. But all of our applicant pools look to be fairly healthy. The elementary art's a little thin, but that's generally not a lot of those folks out there. Enrollment-wise, we are, as I shared at the work session, we've recovered from the dip through the year, and we're back to where we started back in August with 1928. And we can certainly put together a running month-to-month for folks to follow along and keep track. But building's crowded. Building is crowded, and we're still having more kids come in. And so I look for that number to be even bigger next month when I report back. So lastly, and not listed, is just kudos to a lot of our students involved with our winter activities. We had 2 students, Julie Sebastian and Cameron Dumbra, qualified for the next level in the science contest, Science Day, that was held here in Miami County. Our 7th grade girls basketball and varsity girls basketball teams were TRC champs, as well as our high school academic team. We're also crowned TRC champs, and I believe they compete at a regional competition in April. So lots of great things to close out the winter season, and congratulations to all those groups and their coaches. That's the superintendent's report for this evening.
Yeah, and 2 quick comments. The art show is Thursday, March 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. It says display boards will be set up throughout the high school lobby and hallways, so please mark your calendars for that date. And I also want to congratulate, I think we had 8 athletes or basketball players make conference teams, and all 5 of our starting girls players made conference team. I don't know when that's happened in past years, but that's pretty impressive, so congratulations to them, and I'm sorry they got beat Saturday. I got to see that game, and it was a very defensive game. So, Mr. Crispin, on to classified personnel, please.
Thank you. So we're under item 7 there, recommendations, classified personnel. Under employee classified staff in section A there, Stephanie Wise, classified substitute and not listed as specific, which allows us to use her in various spots, and we would pay her accordingly if she would sub as an aide versus food service, that type of thing. So that's why there's no specific designation of category. And then Fatima Akhmadova is going to be joining us as a kitchen aide for 3 hours, and I think we're going to be finally full staffed in the kitchen. It's taken a while. So we've listed supplemental and volunteer positions for our spring sports. And so we have Ben Schweikart, assistant boys track coach, Casey Denlinger, assistant girls track coach, Ryan Furstenberger, junior high boys track coach, Karen Dirks, junior high girls track coach. Mr. Besco is going to be helping out as assistant baseball coach. James Pelfrey, the reserve baseball coach, 50% of that supplemental. Marvin Schroeder gets the other half of that reserve baseball supplemental. Courtney Sievers, assistant softball coach. And then volunteering for middle school and high school track be Al Broombaugh. Item C was removed, and those are the recommendations under classified personnel for this evening.
May I have a motion for items A and B under classified personnel, please? Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Any questions for Mr. Crispin? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes?
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. And just a reminder again, that was only items A and B on the classified schedule. Okay, item 8, certified personnel.
Item 8, letter A, we have the monthly approval of the ESC substitute teacher list. We had advanced placement on the salary schedule for Anna Sampson. We have stipends for our resident educator summative assessment or RESA mentors. And those are teachers on staff, veteran teachers generally, that have those positions and go through training to assist and mentor our new teachers as they go through that process that's required by the state. So we have two of our long-term subs have hit that 61st day mark, and now they go on, this is by ORC, they go on to a prorated teacher salary at step 0. So item E is, as you know, we have our teacher on leave at the high school, and you just don't go out and find somebody to be a substitute AP English teacher. But we were able to reach an agreement with Melissa Lacaze, who was that teacher last year. And she's currently, I think, doing a fellowship at OSU for a doctorate, but was willing to come back and substitute, but also provide us with those all-important lesson plans to help the substitute that's going to be there. And so $200 is the sub-pay that for our teachers that have been here after a while. We really need her help, and we have that on the books, but not necessarily for, this is very unique, that we need a substitute, but also somebody that is going to provide us lesson plans. So we are grateful for her help and hope the board approves that recommendation. 2 resignations, Mr. Hamlin from high school mathematics, and Miss Maliski for high school integrated science. And that rounds out the recommendations for certified personnel.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for certified personnel, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Discussion?
The only thing I'd like to ask about, for item E, the consultant fee, it says not to exceed 36 days. What happens for the remainder of the days? Who subs in that class when this particular person's not available?
So we are looking to secure a single person to provide consistency. Don't have a name yet.
Okay. So is Ms.
So we want the same person. That way it's easy for Melissa to just say, you know, it's the same person that she's talking to weekly in sharing those lesson plans.
And Mrs. Donahue, Mrs. Lacaze, she can't be here every single day because of the work with her just doctorate. That's
Yeah.
why we'll have to have 2 people.
Sure. And I don't recall that we pay our long-term subs. I thought we only, Did we go up to $200? I don't recall that from,
I thought there was did we have a, I'll have to go back, but there's something in my noggin where we had like we hit a $200 mark at some point.
31st day.
31st day. Thank you.
I'm sorry, so at the 31st day,
31st consecutive day as a sub, you would go to 200, because you start, I think it's
That's
100,
correct.
110, or,
Yep.
yeah, it's 100. So from day 1 to 30, on your 31st day, you go to 200.
so then, am I wrong to think that we wouldn't pay her the same fee as a different sub for the first 31 days and then go up to 200 days, or?
Well, she's giving us more than a regular sub. A sub comes in and uses the lesson plans of the teacher who is absent.
Sure.
We don't have that here. We need her knowledge and expertise, her lesson plans from when she was a teacher here previously, to help that other sub when Melissa's not available.
Yeah, well,
So she's providing that extra service.
I understand what you're saying. I also think some of these other subs who've been in place for a while, when they first came on the job, I know that they probably could have done the lesson plans as well, but we didn't pay them upfront those fees. And I do know this is an AP course, but I would believe that the previous teacher perhaps had something laid out that the sub could come in and pick up on, especially since we're now going to have to hire 2 people to cover this. The other sub who comes in is only going to make $100 a day, right? Or whatever the other fee is.
Right, because the lesson plans are being provided to that person.
Right.
And to your point, yeah, this is not an ideal situation, and we're trying to do the best we can to cover it.
And my guess is Mrs. LeCays will also be doing the grading, which is a big deal in an AP class. Doing the grading and making the feedback, which a regular sub may or may not have the knowledge to do. And I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Sampson and our 2 subs who have reached the long-term sub of 61 days. I don't know if it's exciting or a milestone, and thanks to all the subs who have come out and helped us out this year. And I'd also like to wish Mr. Hamlin and Mrs. Maluski all the best. I know both will be missed. Math and science teachers, especially at their level, are not easy to come by, so it will be interesting to see what we have in the interview pool. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Mansfield? Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is the recommendations for business.
Thank you. We're skipping A, we're going right to B, which is a resolution for our membership to the Ohio High School Athletic Association for next year. Item C is the YMCA contract, and my recommendation is that we choose to utilize their personnel throughout the day as a rather in exchange for rent. We struggle with keeping aides, and we don't have enough now, and to have their additional help to be in the building, help with recess, help with lunch, maybe in the offices, maybe in the classrooms, would be a great benefit. And because right now we're not attracting folks to come in and serve in those positions. So other than that, that was one of the first things I heard upon coming to Bethel this summer, was the need for before school and after school care. Just comments from folks I would bump into, not necessarily go get the why. That came much later, but I think this has potential to be a great thing for our families that are bringing their kids to school. They know they can bring them earlier and drop them off on site, as opposed to, if it was just housed at the Y, it's then how do we get them here? And our bus schedule's already tight, and we barely have enough drivers now. So having it on site, I think, can be a great thing, as well as the 100 hours they're giving us for staff monthly. That ends up being about a $3,000, $3,200 value if we use all those hours, and can be a great thing. We have a big donation in item D. Comes from our Bethel Athletic Boosters, $83,202 to purchase the scoreboard for the new stadium, as well as the end zone play clocks and a sound system from Daktronics. Many thanks to the boosters and all the parents that work concessions and help raise the funds to make that happen for the stadium project. We have revisions and updates from Neola. Probably most notable is the policy 7217 has to do with weapons, and as we know, Ohio's changed their conceal carry requirements for everyone, as well as school employees. And we need to have more discussions where we want to go with that, not tonight. But this emphasizes and puts into policy that despite those changes in Ohio, if you're going to be on a school campus, you still have to have a carry conceal license. And so wanted to make sure I mentioned that publicly. The others are pretty much tweaks of current policies. And again, if you have any questions for that, we can get to those here in a little bit. I'll come back to school calendar, and we'll just go. Tina, you want to cover the OFCC resolution again while I...
Sure.
Thank you.
We have a resolution for the design phase that needs to be approved. This is no different than the past resolutions that we have approved. As you know, the OFCC's had some transition and turnover in their departments as well. So they just need us to approve this, and we can continue with the project. So there are really no changes from what we've approved in the past, so unless you have any questions.
Thank you. So let's talk the calendar recommendation, which we're up to option J. That's number 10. This is the furthest I've ever gone, but it's been a great process. And first, let me thank our administrative team, not just the principals, but all the heads of all our departments, as well as Aaron and Tracy and the teachers for their input. Last week, we've learned a lot about each other through this process, and it's been very thoughtful and a learning experience. It's kind of like going shopping for a new house, right? And you think, we definitely want a fireplace. And we walk into a house, and lo and behold, they have this awesome walkout basement. But they don't have a fireplace, but now we like the walkout basement. And now that becomes the priority. And so there's been a lot of give and take and a lot of what do we need? What do we need in a school calendar? What's it going to look like when we're 2 buildings on a campus as opposed to 1? And how are we going to address the most important thing, and that's our students and their learning? Well documented is some of the learning loss that's taken place across Ohio. We did not escape that. It's happened here, not as severely, but it's there. We have our student demographic is becoming more diverse by the week, and along that are the abilities to learn. You know, our English language learners, that's been discussed, and our folks are doing a great job working with all those populations, but research tells us, and when we look at what improves student learning, what has the biggest impact on student learning, it's not books, it's not spending per pupil, it's the teacher in the classroom. Teacher with students in the classroom. And that's always been my approach, is how to maximize, get enough time for our teachers to be with our kids and provide intervention and provide remediation. Yes, are standardized tests important? Again, it was mentioned here tonight. Can argue for them and against them, but it is a measure that we are held to, and it's the Super Bowl. But we are taking checks all throughout the year because this staff, like many across the state, get what standardized tests are and are still generally interested in, are our kids becoming better readers, and are they getting better at math, problem-solving skills, and all those things. It takes time. It takes time. With or without those measures, students and teachers together, there's an opportunity for learning. And so, you know, that's how we set out to start building the calendar. You know, I talked last week about the survey that Mr. Swope conducted with the middle school and high school students. And I'd love for this to be more of an ag-interested school. It's not right now. And the numbers were, that I shared with the board, it's not there. And I have a bias. That is a soft spot for me for lots of different reasons. But, you know, I'm not going to force that on this district. It doesn't fit right now. So does that mean we're rural or not rural? I don't know. I just know that is not, it's just not where we're at. So, so yeah, we're looking to increase time with teachers and students. And we're not extending the day. We're working within the calendar day. And we've jostled some things around. And again, through lots of give and take and discussions, as late as today, we've discovered what's important and what's not important. So before you is option J, and we've gone away from the fair all but one day for our teachers. And we've talked about what accommodations might be made for those folks on that Thursday or Friday, and those can be handled on an individual basis. And so, and then we have school then starting the 23rd. This is, of course, provided that the K-5 building opens on time. So that's kind of a thing that's hanging out there that we don't know. And so a little shorter on our winter break, and that was kind of a late give and take today, working with the union to help us, you know, still get some more time with our kids before April, and give some, alleviate some of the issues with the fair. So again, always interesting in putting these things together. Lots of variables, internal, external, personal, professional, but we always need to get back to instructional time with kids and teachers. And so that's option J for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. May I have a motion to put all the items except item A, so that would be B through G on the agenda, on the consent calendar for business items?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Discussion or comments?
I have a few. On the YMCA contract for those services, on line number 5, there's a communication about public communications and speaking on behalf of the program, I believe. I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that when it comes to discussing the school or any of our media relations, that it's in alignment with our board policy. It just says they have the primary responsibility for public relations and publicity. You went past it.
Oh, sorry.
Right there, number 5.
Yeah, number 5.
So I just want to make sure that was in alignment with our school board policy. Secondly, in the contract, it does not delineate the requirement for what type of background investigations or checks. So just ensuring that it's in compliance with our board policy. Try it again.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that whatever the requirements is for background checks with mingling with students during the school day is in compliance with board policy. It doesn't specify here, it could already be, but I just wanted to make sure that the background checks were in alignment with our policy.
Yeah,
That's
so two things. As far as the communication piece, Vicki, I see you guys hung around. Good for you. They're good folks, and again, the you know, going through the flyers that were included here was a, how's this look? This is what we usually put out. Does that work? I think they're going to be great to work with, but we'll certainly put them in touch with Jacob and Mr. Watson, and you don't need one more thing to do, and they'll take care of that. We did talk about that was in our initial meeting when we all lit up. Cassie's not here, but when we heard, you know, we could get some staff from them, we were like, okay, but what does that mean? And the rigor of their background checks is right with us, and Mr. Pogorski was also good with the contract and the liability pieces that might be out there, he's good with.
Right, yeah, thank you. I was just trying to clarify those few things before we voted on it. And I was more really concerned about what the communications was in when we would have to utilize any crisis communication, you know, the lead for that in the event here at the school property, that's all. I had a couple more questions on a few other items.
Jacob, can I interrupt you? I had one more while we're on the YMCA contract. Did we get in there where we're doing the staffing for playground? What
Yes.
number was that? Because I missed it.
1 to 2 based on our numbers.
Right. Where was it listed in the
Oh.
contract?
For the numbers for staff, or the number of staff, their staff?
Was it, we could either take the rent option, or was that listed in the current contract? Because I didn't go back and check.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I just ran out of time.
No, that's good. It is, where is it? So under item 3, we have the hours for us, and I think it might be early on here.
Three A, okay.
Yeah. 3A is the hours for staff. Is that, I don't,
Right, I didn't see it, but like I said, I didn't go back and read through the whole contract after I read. So I just wanted to make
it's
sure.
in there because I
Oh, I
had a
thought that's what
follow-up
you said.
question to Vicky, and she answered. We'll find it.
Can we adopt it and if it's not in there, you will
May-
add that language?
I may have, we may have uploaded the
Wrong, okay.
wrong version, but I have it readily available.
Do you want me to close out of this one?
Yeah. So, so 3A says, as part of the agreement, up to 100 hours of care will be allotted for Bethel staff, children at no cost. The 100 hours allows for an average of 10 Bethel staff children per elementary building, not to exceed 20 Bethel staff children district-wide that have up to 5 hours per child per week to attend the program at no cost, up to 5 hours per week. This is a big story problem. Each hour will be counted for any portion of an hour. This provision will continue throughout the 3-year term. Then we go into item B. It says Bethel Local Schools waive rent, which will allow for full-time YMCA staff personnel to be hired, which will increase quality and allow for YMCA staff to assist with recess and lunch duties. Yep. Sorry about that. I uploaded
Okay.
the old one.
I had a email conversation with Mr. Crispin because at the work session, we talked about whether we were going to take the rent option or take the additional staffing during the school day. In the original contract, that language was not in the contract, and apparently a old version of the contract got uploaded. He just read the corrected language. So again, we're taking the option, not the rent option, we're taking the option to
For the staff.
take staff for recess duty and extra lunch help. Does that clarify what we're voting on? No, it doesn't cost
No
anything.
cost.
They're providing that in lieu of rent. I apologize if that was unclear. So we could either get rent money from them for using our facility, or they would provide staffing. So we took the staffing option. We have no control. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to pay additional. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
With regards to the schedule, you don't have to pull it up. One of the things that you had talked about was testing. Some of the things we heard already from the community that had questions about the agenda, was questioning what's the validity of the state testing. I mean, the state testing, does it help? Do we have to do state testing for any of our funding models? Does the teachers get evaluated on the testing results? Is that part of their evaluation? Is there any of those pieces associated with state testing?
So the answer is Ohio has to participate in has to have state testing to qualify for federal funds. And so we are a state of Ohio school, so we participate in standardized testing. So There's OTES 2 is the new teacher evaluation system. It's less heavy than it has been on teacher evaluation, hinging on performance of students. But we're still measuring kids. And again, I get back to testing or not testing, state tests, the high stakes stuff. It's there, but we still have other measures that say we have kids that we need to reach, and we need to do a better job of reaching, and that generally takes time. So. Yes. So yeah, we talked, Mrs. Mansfield talked about end-of-course exams, which is the more familiar path for students to graduate.
All right, thank you for that answer. And then lastly, my last question, one of the speakers tonight that talked about the agenda talked about an addition of 10 minutes to the school day or learning. Since we haven't been presented any plan that talked about extending any school day or changing the school times or extending anything, was that published publicly that we missed that?
So start and end times are generally not board approved. An extension to the day would definitely have to be approved, because that would come in the form of an MOU and would probably have a price tag on it. Anytime you extend the day, teachers are going to say, hey, you're going to pay us more. Any adjustments that we may do are all going to be within the confines of the current master agreement.
So we're not asking the teachers to stay here longer without any pay?
No, sir.
Okay. Just wondering, because that's kind of the gist that I was getting listening was that, and was concerned that we had presented something publicly that we had not heard as a board, or at least I didn't, because it was brought up by the community. So was that presented to the teachers and students, and they went and told other people?
We didn't talk about extending the school day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the superintendent and the teachers for their willingness to negotiate, especially at the 11th hour, the way that some of it has been done. I think if I were the teachers, I may have held out for March 22nd to be April the 1st. But that's just my opinion. Since
Stop it.
When I was working, I appreciated having the day after Easter is on March 31st this year, and I appreciated having that day after, especially for families and teacher families that travel to attend. But again, I want to thank everybody for their willingness to hammer this out.
Yes, I just had a follow-up question for the YMCA. Do want to make sure Jacob got a chance to finish his other questions. I know with the allotted amount for the Bethel staff, children to come, what if we exceed that 20, that number of 20 staff members, children? How will we account for that? Let's say there's 25 or 30.
Excuse me, can you please go to the microphone? Otherwise it won't record, because there may be parents interested in, or staff members, I should say, interested in your answer.
Thank you. So basically, we would talk with the school. We work with each district, and it's the same thing with the parents. If the parents have concerns about their fees or anything like that, we work with them. So, and again, I just want to make sure the parents know the school isn't paying for this at all. It's something that each parent will decide. And then I didn't get to mention, one of the cool things is for any of your students that are high schoolers that are interested in working, we also hire them to be supplemental staff. So that's another benefit, just FYI. Did I answer your question?
It did,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Thank you.
sure.
And I was, since you're there, if you don't mind, sorry, is there going to be a max number, or will it be dependent on how many workers you hire, or what will lead?
That's a great question. So it really comes down to two things. It comes down to our license capacity based on what the state of Ohio through ODJFS comes out and visits the site that will use the space. So they give us a capacity based on square footage. And then, of course, we'll have a staff capacity. We're kind of guesstimating based on like what we've heard that we'll probably have about 54 for this district. But, if there's more, we'll work with that as well. So
Thank you.
thank you.
My prediction is you will be full. I want to mention, thank you to Mr. Crispin. He uploaded the correct contract, and I just want to read item B. This is what I was referencing. Bethel Local Schools will waive rent, which will allow for full-time YMCA staff personnel to be hired, which will increase quality and allow for YMCA staff to assist with recess and lunch duties when available. Thank you, Mr. Crispin. And I apologize, I didn't get back to check it. I knew you said it was in there and I didn't see it when I was scrolling down, so it's good we caught it now. All right. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please? And please remember this is for items B through G.
Mrs. Donna?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Again.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes, the short winter break makes me super sad on that calendar, but yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Next up, we have BEA, Mrs. Brewer and/or Mrs. Henry.
First of all, I want to wish good luck to Mrs. Maluski, and I have not accepted that Mr. Hamlin is retiring. It's not going to happen. He's not leaving. It's not happening. So, Mr. Hamlin, if you're listening, sorry, you're here next year. This has been a fun week. It's been a very lengthy process. Driving around after school today, driving my kids to so many places, not even getting out of the car before another one gets in to take them somewhere else. I thought about compromise and schedules, and it includes obviously more than the students and the staff, but obviously the community. And that's what we need to think about, is compromise. We have a lot more to work on, but we're willing to do that. We are excited to see the progress in the new building. We will continue to work with administration to make the transition as smooth as possible, to follow all policies and Bethel education contract. It's a process, and compromise is the key. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Brewer. Facilities Committee, Mr. Crispin or Mr. Elam, would you like to read that write-up from Peterson?
Oh, you have it. Great. Awesome. So, this is from the 13th of February. masonry veneer installation will be wrapping up soon, finishing in area 2 and 3, which is the dining room and classroom wing. Window installation continues to follow the masonry veneer installation. Metal stud framing work is essentially complete. There will be some bulkheads to frame out once overhead work is complete. Drywall hanging is wrapping up on walls for the entire building. There will be some to do on the bulkheads. Drywall finishing work is mainly down to area 9. Painting is ongoing in areas 1 and 4 through 8. Ceiling grid installation continues in area 7 and 8. Approximately 65% of the casework of the building is installed. The last loads are due to deliver towards the end of March. Gymnasium equipment is scheduled to deliver around the end of March. Restroom resinous flooring in the next couple of weeks, along with ceramic tile. Those will be laid. Visual display board installation has begun, hoping for delivery of toilet partitions, toilet accessories within the next month. Overhead mechanical and electrical work along with in-wall rough-in work is ongoing throughout as needed. At the athletic field, the contractor has installed the underground drainage for the turf field. So, yeah, we are still, we got the price quote for playground, moving our current playground equipment over, and it's about $60,000, $62,000. So we're just, because we're curious, what does a new piece cost? So Todd's going to reach out to that vendor, and just because we're kind of curious, because it seems like it's a lot of money to be spending on a piece of equipment that's it's in very good shape, but we're asking. We're still waiting to get possession of the key for the press box, but and they have to come back and do some punch out work, but for the most part it's done, looks great. We're ready to pour footers for the field house. We're running into some issues. We're concerned about how we're going to get the loads of concrete out to that area, given the ground. It is muddy. It is not very far until you get to, I think the first is water line and then electricity. And so started having conversations about a partial road being put in that would get us at least to that side of the stadium, and then we can figure out the rest. But we may have to do that to get, I forget how many loads of 30, 40 truckloads out there. Yeah, it's a lot of wear and tear, and he said once it's done, it's going to be pretty hard to fix. So we're looking at that. The inside's looking great. We've had a couple groups over the last couple weeks. We need to get our facilities folks over there, and we'll try to arrange that as part of our meeting next month. Because it's exciting. We went over the other day, and there was nothing done in the media center. 2 days later, all the cabinetry and shelves are up, and so things are happening fast, and you can start seeing what this beautiful building is going to look like. So very exciting. We actually had our weekly meeting in the conference room there, so that was kind of fun. It was very cool, very cool. So good stuff happening, and I think Jacobs has some new aerial photos that he's going to upload here in a day or two. So, yep.
Do we want to set a time for the facilities committee meeting next?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's.
I'm sorry, next month.
Yep.
When you mentioned the photos, you meant Jacob Watson, is that correct?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless. So our work session's the 14th. And so our core meeting will be the 13th? Because we've moved everything? Or do we? Yeah, because our core meeting was February 13th.
Right, so then I think our board meeting will be the 20th of March unless, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
so we're going to do the facilities meeting on the 20th or no?
You want to keep it on the night of the board meeting? I can go. I'll be around. Let's do it the 20th?
I don't think the people coming from work will be able to get here before a work session.
Okay, let's do March 20th. Yep. 6 o'clock?
Yes.
And I'll reach out to, and if anybody, maybe we'll try to go over there 5:30-ish. Take a look around. Yep. I'll send that out.
Do we have any updates for the technology committee?
One of the questions that I had is, when we previously started the committee, did we set up any rules of engagement for the committee with regards to the minimum personnel that would be on it? Any of those things currently in place now before we would call for a meeting to make sure we hit those appropriate? I didn't know if we had already said like IT office, so many teachers, community members.
I wasn't
did
on
we
that
already write
committee
it?
before, so I don't really know the structure of it. I think Mrs. Reese may have been, so you may want to reach out to her, unless Mr. Crispin has further details.
Okay.
None.
Yeah, I didn't know either, so I figured I knew Miss Reese would be here. So if no one here had it, I would reach out to her.
Great, thank you. Liaison reports.
Nothing new as far as legislation except pass the OSBA email that we all got for the week of February 13th. Everything's, since it's just started, everything's just being proposed.
Excellent. And VCTC liaison, Mrs. Donahue?
Yes, there was several things that I took note of to share achievements of some Bethel students that have excelled. Congratulations to the regional competition winners from our cosmetology, from the CTC cosmetology program. Riley Blakely earned a bronze medal in the nail care contest. And those winners will continue on to compete in the State Skills USA competition. In addition, there are several seniors who were tapped for induction into the National Technical Honor Society, NTHS, and there are 8 from Bethel. Jaden Beswetherick, Early Childhood Education, Simran Shahal, Criminal Justice, John Dillman, Robotics and Automation, Aaron Doyle, Diesel Power Technologies, Akram Kuchiev, Health Occupations, Alex Lyall, Robotics and Automation, Seth Lyall, Computer Coding and Web Applications, and Sarah Newton in pre-nursing. So hats off to those students. And another award, there were 2 students chosen for the month of January, and one of them was a Bethel student, Jaden Beswetherick, is a senior in the early education program, and her instructor indicated she was a great nominee for Student of the Month. She set a personal goal for herself to have perfect attendance this year, and so far she is on track. She arrives each day with a positive attitude and ready to learn. She is kind to peers and assists them when needed. She does a phenomenal job teaching the preschoolers and can be counted on to be reliable and professional. So I just wanted to share some of that good news. And
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Athletic Council, Mrs. Mansfield, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I think I'm student activities now. We think we changed that.
Oh,
That's
okay,
fine.
we'll get it
And
changed.
so ergo and therefore, a lot of my items have already been covered and kudos by a lot of other people prior to me. So I won't belabor it too much. I will say that what has not already been mentioned has been that the band and choir student district competition for OMEA is going to be the weekend of March 3rd. So that's coming up. Obviously, we've already talked about our girls basketball team being outright champs for high school and 7th grade. We've already mentioned that, which is awesome and way to go. And our academic team and science fair stuff has already been mentioned. So again, not a lot left for me to talk about. Music showcase night is coming up, and our musical students are meeting 5 nights a week to get prepared for Shrek. So it's coming. Get excited. It's cool. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. Next up,
Lori?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying to hold it and talk right. Is this also the area where we could also have discussion outside of just these? Are we allowed to have discussion about other things? Yeah. Okay. I would like to have a discussion. So in the beginning of the meeting, the worst thing I think that we could do as a board is what I did, and that was interrupt somebody that's speaking only on the matter of what are we saying to the community members that are coming up to ask us questions about the agenda, right? So I just was looking to potentially clarify, when we ask in the beginning of this, questions on the agenda, what is it? Is it specifically agenda item 1B? My question is this. Is it talk about an item that's on the agenda and give our philosophy or our personal feelings with regards to the agenda item all in itself? What is it? You know, I don't know if we've truly defined what we're asking for when we have that on the front of here. And so that we could be good stewards of not only their time, but making sure that we are getting the true pieces that are needed when we have those discussions. So, with that, I know we won't be able to decide that tonight because I just brought it up, but I think we should look at our Neola or ask John, like, do we need to put out our own guidance specifically to questions regarding agenda items and what we're trying to ask? And then secondly, we went through it so fast I didn't have an opportunity to ask a question before we voted on it, but the other thing was when we're doing supplementals and approving those, it would be nice if we had the actual step they were on for the supplemental. That way we could have a reference back, so when they're doing the contracts and we have a record at least here to coincide with that contract for the supplemental, that they're a step 6, a step 9, a step 0. So I think that would help long term for everyone.
Are you talking on these contracts, on the athletic contracts?
Yes, it's, you know, like in the BA contract, it talks about in the supplementals and it has their steps they could be. When we do that, when we do teachers and we update it, so we haven't done this before of adding that, but I was just thinking that potentially that would get rid of any confusion in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, we caught that, caught it late, and
It is late.
yeah, we did. We caught that, caught it late, and that's just, we're going to shore that up with Mr. Smith, so that actually comes from his office, and then we verify it if it's a coach that's been with us before to make sure we're on the same step and that kind of thing. So it'll be there next time.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. That was just a suggestion. So
Yeah, no, yeah, very good.
that's all I had to discuss.
And before we go into public participation, I wanted to let the community and the board know we will likely have a special meeting in the foreseeable future because Mr. Crispin did get the last furniture bid today for the new K-5 building, furniture for that. And it is critical we get it ordered because lead times are months. So we want to make sure we get the furniture in for the new building. So I wanted to let the community know that, and there may be a need at that meeting to call an executive session. I'm not sure with some of the agenda items pulled tonight if those will be brought back, but I just want to give the community that update and the board that update if they would come back at the special meeting. That is a possibility, and we would be voting on the furniture items. So, okay. Any other comments before we go into public participation? Yes, Natalie?
I have one more comment, something to think about as well. I know a lot of times after the public have spoken, perhaps in the agenda piece and definitely at the end, sometimes there's questions, just general questions that I don't know that they ever get answered. And sometimes I would like to know the answer to those. And so I was wondering, we used to do this years ago, and maybe not even that long ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. We used to have the old business at the top of the agenda, where maybe we could bring that back and have some of those questions answered again. It's just something that I know that would be helpful for me, as well as I'm sure some of the other folks as well. Just something to consider again.
I think those are some good points, and I don't know if going backwards the way we used to do it is the right answer, but I think that we need to come up with an answer, right? To how do we ensure that we have good communication all the way through with people with questions? Sometimes it's easier when the community member that has questions would reach out ahead of time, so that we could have the questions, so that then we could follow back up if we need to make a decision with regards to it, or it allows for a pathway back for the answer as well, so we can have that on record, is one way. So I would also say that, with regards to this agenda and some of the things that were brought up so far, no one that I know have reached out to me, so to ask questions of what we were doing or what we knew, which I potentially could have helped saying, we're still working on all aspects of the schedule or any of those pieces. So it's just different. It would have been difficult though if they would have asked about the extended time or any of the time limits in the 10 minutes that was brought up. That I wouldn't have been able to answer any of that. So
Yeah, and I will again reference what I brought up at the beginning of public participation. If people follow this, I know, and I got called on it last meeting. I'll confess, I didn't always do it right. But, if you have a question, ask Mrs. Hageman and Mr. Crispin in an email. It's very simple. Give them a call. They're happy to answer. And then it's very easy. We can do an old business part of the agenda or whatever, Natalie, and explain that. It's an effective use of all of our time. I agree. Thank you, Mr. King. Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Anything else? Okay, public participation. Up first, I have Mr. Samir Agiliev, and I apologize if I didn't get the name right. Okay. Bronwyn Crowley.
Thank you. I'm a couple months behind getting this info out, but how this particular event was handled is something the community should be very aware of. During the September 12th regular BOE meeting, it was announced that Jessica Franz resigned her position on the Bethel Board of Education. Applications were accepted soon after, and 8 candidates applied. One of the 8 applicants was former board president Jacob King. Candidate interviews were performed on September 27th in a special closed session. Due to the nature of that meeting, no votes were taken at that time. That's important to remember. A special meeting to vote on the new candidate was to take place on September 30th. Now, why should this be a concern for every resident in this district? Let me explain. Then Board President Mansfield admits to personally calling King on the evening of September 28th. She claims this was to ensure King was not offering to serve out of obligation. She also informed him that on that call that he was a top candidate. This is not speculation or conjecture. This information was in an email obtained through a public record request. There is no record of any of the other 7 candidates receiving such a phone call. Late in the evening on September 29th, 7 out of the 8 candidates received an email from Mansfield stating that they were not selected. Remember how I just said that no vote was taken at the September 27th session? Yet all candidates except for King were emailed before the actual vote on September 30th that they were not selected. One of the emails sent was quickly retracted by Mansfield. The candidate, who I will now refer to as John Doe, was informed he actually was one of the top 2 candidates. Let me repeat once more that no vote was taken at the September 27th meeting. Who gave the authority for her to name any 2 candidates as the top 2? The board held a special meeting on September 30th. In a surprise to absolutely no one, King was the only candidate in attendance. Again, no vote by the entirety of the board had taken place prior to this meeting. That evening, he was voted in 3-1. Public records reveal a further email conversation between Mansfield and Doe that began the evening of September 30th. Doe had concerns after hearing about the September 28th call with King and the email notice of non-selection to 7 out of the 8 candidates prior to the September 30th nomination meeting and vote. Given the immense degree of investigation the Bethel BOE has been under the past year, one would assume that it would be carefully dotting every I and crossing every T. But what was Mansfield's excuse for why the September 29th email was sent to 7 out of the 8 candidates? Her dog, Gidgy, sent it. Yes, you heard that correctly. Our then board president used the modern-day version of "the dog ate my homework" as an excuse as to why 7 out of the 8 board candidates received a thanks but no thanks email before the board ever took a vote. Again, this is not hearsay or conjecture. This asinine excuse is a matter of public record. Now let's talk about public records. It took 66 days for me to get the first set of records from my original request dated October 1st dealing with this board member selection. I sent 2 subsequent requests as it was very clear that the information being requested was not forthcoming. Every further request I sent for info produced one more email that just happened to be found. I made no further requests as it was clear information was not being shared as freely as it should have been. The majority of you on the board continue to operate as if you are above the law when we realize that this community is watching and we have had enough. We're not going anywhere and we are not giving up until you are removed or that you're voted out in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Crowley. Mrs. Seyfried.
I have brought this up before, but I feel this board continues to forget it. But as a school, you have a moral and ethical obligation to put children's safety first. Nothing is more important than that. Not curriculum, not a new building, not athletics, not state test scores, not even personal feelings or opinions. Student safety is number one, and you must answer to every single parent in this community when you fail at that. Our society has digressed into the pressure of just calm down, don't make a big deal about it, sit back and wait for someone to tell you what to do. And this attitude is conditioning adults and our children to just stay quiet and wait for someone else to solve the problem. Why is this an issue? You are conditioning the children in this school to not question potential dangers. You are conditioning our children to not be tattletales, to not question what our minds and bodies tell us is off. Our children's new normal, according to the path that you have taken, will be don't question if a man can be in your restroom, that's transphobic. Don't question if a man can watch you undress in the locker room, that's what bigots do. Your complacent attitude toward the co-ed restrooms you implemented has created an unsafe and mentally unhealthy environment for every single child you are responsible for. Can you answer honestly if you are being proactive to potential dangers here? Can you look yourself in the mirror at night and say your decisions are the best decisions for every student here? When you know there is a problem but continue to remain inactive, are you putting our children first? No, you are not. Ask yourself if your actions or lack of actions are because it's convenient and easier for you or because it's good for our kids. In terms of safety, your convenience and personal opinions will always take a back seat to what is good for the kids in this community. It has been mentioned a couple different times over the past year that maybe teachers can monitor the restrooms in between classes and at lunch. To lay the responsibility of bathroom safety on our teachers is insanity on your part. When will our teachers have time to be security and bathroom monitors? Teachers and staff are already maxed out on time to the point of not being accessible to students to talk to when there is actually a problem. Teachers are doing 5 to 20 things at one time and are not robots. So unfortunately, they are not able to always do all 20 things to the best of their ability, which allows things to be missed. And that is not a slam against our teachers. Our teachers have gone above and beyond the typical expectations over the last few years with COVID, the immense growth of the district, and now with co-ed restrooms. To ask them to be bathroom monitors will pull from their other duties. And we all know how important teaching to those wonderful state tests really are. The big push for starting our school year earlier is for more instruction time before state testing. How is being bathroom monitors, taking away planning times, and adding more concerns and stress to our teachers going to help them teach to the state tests any better than they already do? It's not. You cannot take more time away from our teachers and their families and expect better performance. You will not solve this problem by sitting back and doing nothing, which is precisely what you have done for a year. For a year, you have sat back and crossed your fingers that we would just shut up and go away. You were presented with the option of bathroom partitions in an FAQ by the previous super, that you approved, by the way, but just went through the motions of looking into it like it was a huge inconvenience, and after months of asking what you were doing with the partitions, surprise, surprise, you voted them down in May. Why? Well, Mr. Elam said,
It doesn't look like we're gaining much, and that price is a sticking point for him. Mrs. Sebastian said, and money we put here, meaning the restrooms, is money we don't have to put in the new 5th grade wing. That's a sticking point for her. Danny and Lyda both reiterated the comment of, I don't see the value. It was voted down and never to be discussed again, just like the community forum. You still have your fingers crossed we would just shut up and go away. Have you investigated any other safety options for our bathrooms? Have you reached out to other districts to see what they're doing? Every step you take is an improvement from doing nothing. Some near my districts, none of which have co-ed facilities like we do, but regardless, they have taken a proactive approach to their bathroom safety. For example, I would encourage one of you, anyone who has the guts to acknowledge this is a problem, to reach out to Stebbins High School about what they have done for bathroom safety. They are now using Halo smart sensors to monitor vaping, THC, violence, noise level, and occupancy levels within the restrooms. The sensors then alert staff and law enforcement of any incidences in a timely manner. It would save time in situations like a male principal taking the time to hunt down the female school resource officer to investigate a commotion in the bathroom because he's a male and doesn't feel comfortable entering a female restroom. Pretty much like what happened on January 12th. This is just one option for restroom safety. I'm sure there are others. If you can spend roughly $750,000 on fake grass, then price really isn't a sticking point for you, is it? You created the co-ed restroom problem, yet do not seem to care about the consequences of that decision. I would like next to ask the policy for the multiple students in a single stall. Is there one? On January 12th, there was an incident that occurred in the female restroom. It was important enough for the school resource officer to submit a report to the Miami County Sheriff's Office, but our school admin did not seem the need to investigate it any further or to make our own school report or record about it. There is something wrong with that. You may not be aware of what happened.
Mrs. Seyfried, your time is up. Thank you very much for your comments. Mrs. Reese.
Good evening again. So I have a couple of topics. Stop me if I hit my limit. So the first is I'd like to talk about the amendment to the superintendent contract. This is nothing personal against Mr. Crispin. I barely know him. These are process questions only. So the contract stated that the interim superintendent contract terms were in effect on an interim basis only until such time as the board is able to secure the appointment of an individual for regular service as a permanent superintendent of schools. But the board elected to extend this rather pricey contract from 227 days to 260 days, plus add paid holidays. The interim per diem rate is roughly $650 per day, while the permanent contract is just under $558 a day. I know that it's not just salary to consider, but I'd like to understand your rationale for choosing to disregard the terms of the interim contract and extend it. I would also like to ask why the board offered a 4-year initial contract when tradition here and also within the education industry, as a rule, has been a 2 to 3 year initial contract. So on top of the interim that just got extended, this is 5 years total. Second topic is the extra trip pay. This was voted on at the last regular meeting without discussion at a work session. It wasn't until Mr. Crispin noted at the meeting that the drivers have to sit through the events that the light bulb went off, and I remembered why the pay was lower at Bethel than some of the other schools. It is because we pay our drivers for the wait time as well as the actual drive time. I'm not saying an increase is not warranted, but the increase awarded was based on inaccurate data because some schools pay wait time and some do not. Some pay as a percentage of the bus driver rate. Some pay more for the first 2 hours, then pay a flat rate, basically to cover the wait time. After the last meeting, I had a discussion with Mr. Crispin where I pointed out the wait time issue, and he assured me he would follow up to determine the conditions of pay for each school on the list. I have received no further information. So this issue came up in August of 2019. So just wanted to give you a little information. The 5 schools that were compared were Bethel, Northwestern, Milton, Miami East, and Tip City. The rates for trip pay were $12.50 for Bethel, Northwestern $12.50. Milton was 2 hours regular rate, then $13.15 an hour. Miami East was 80% regular rate for the trip, which started at $15.60. And Tip City was $12.20 an hour, which is even lower than us. So I would like to propose that you revisit the increase from $12.50 to $18.50 to base it on an accurate comparison to other like schools, not including city schools, and to consider the fact that we pay for wait time. Okay, next topic. Work session meetings are in conflict with township meetings, forcing residents to choose between the two. My understanding is that the meetings have been pushed out a week to allow more time to prepare the financial reports for the meetings. It is a longstanding tradition to have the regular meeting the second Monday of the month. To push both meetings out a week just to have financial reports available for the work session is not a good trade-off. There has always been the understanding that the financial reports may not necessarily be ready during the first week of the month, and it has not delayed one single approval of the regular meetings. In fact, the work sessions used to be during the last week of the previous month, meaning that the financial reports could have never been ready for the work session. In addition, many holidays fall on the third Monday of the month. In January, February, June, November would be Thanksgiving week, and December is near the holidays. Since I am one of the residents that will have to choose, I ask that you consider moving the meetings back to the first Tuesday and the second Monday. For the YMCA, this sounds like a great program to me, but I'm disappointed with the explanation. The program likely becomes a cost to the school in exchange for some aid help. We don't get rent income. We provide the facilities, utilities, cleaning services, including on calamity days. I can't see the correct contract. I downloaded the one that was there, which was not the right one. So it's difficult, but no quantification of the costs were presented. And then, Mrs. Sebastian, you read the term for hire and when you read the new paragraph. So does that mean that they become employees? Playground equipment, I like the idea of possibly looking at buying new, because we have to consider the fact that we may need the old playground equipment in a year as we begin to backfill students into the current elementary building due to Carriage Trails 2.0. And on communications, I'd just like to say we all have similar questions. A public school should have public discussion and public answers. Let's not repeat history and the failure of the coffee talks, private conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reese. Mr. Swanson.
Chris Swanson, Bethel class of 68. Where the Miami County Sheriff's Office, but not our school admin, did not see a need to investigate it any further or make any type of report or record about it. There's something wrong with that! Exclamation point. I didn't read this before. You may not be aware of what happened, as you, Lori, have mentioned yourself. The board does not concern itself with the day-to-day operations, but maybe this board should take a little more interest to see the outcome and consequences of your decision-making. Final paragraph. According to the Ohio School Board Association website, I quote, "It is imperative that the board president is firm but polite and consistent in the way the district's policy and procedures are administered so that all community members are treated fairly," end quote. I, for one, have not been treated fairly or respectfully by this board. You have ignored my safety concerns and questions since last January. I even asked at a board meeting, willing to give up my 5 minutes of time to get answers, but was told no. Yet you will address other people's concerns on the spot, even people who are not community members. That emphasis was mine. I have multiple instances where this has occurred. I am again requesting for one of you to address my concerns from today, from the meeting on January 10th, 2022, and from the meeting on August 8th, 2022, without any further delay. You all have my email address from previous times I have reached out to you. Now, my comments are on the Hegelian dialect, and on my paper I wrote problem, reaction, solution, because most people don't, many people are not well-versed in ancient philosophies. An example would be, under Donald Trump, there was no border crisis. It was created before he went to Washington and occupied the White House, this man, Joe Biden, said, "Surge the border, surge the border," inviting some people who were actually escaping political problems, but I believe a vast majority, because I see them as late teens, 20s, 30-year-old men. No. So the problem was created. And then there was a reaction among many people when they heard figures recently like 6 million people have entered the country illegally in the last 2 years. So there we have a reaction to a problem that formerly did not exist. And then the solution, the American people can take care of this. They'll pay for it, not a problem. And I said all of that about the Hegelian dialect to go into briefly that there is a problem in the restrooms, and I read that report, and I thought, oh, well, hopefully this won't get any worse. And then I started reading things online from like Virginia, and the state of Virginia, and I'm thinking, when this gets worse, and I have every reason to believe it will get worse, knowing human nature, then what will be your solution? I think it's represented by that flag that I did not pledge allegiance to. That is not the American flag. That's an Admiralty flag. And why you brought it back after I spoke about it 6 or 8 months ago, I don't know. I agree with this one.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments. I apologize. It looks like it says Eric Kunkel. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kunkel. I apologize. If you'd like to stay and talk to us afterwards, I'll be happy to stick around. Is there any need for an executive session tonight? As I said earlier, there will be probably a need for executive session when we meet about the furniture. Okay, all right. Is there any other information the board needs to convey before we adjourn?
I have a follow-up question. Heard it again. Are we taking away the planning period of the teachers? No. Okay. I believe are we going to be in compliance with the contract, which requires 200 minutes per week? Yes. Okay, we'll be in compliance with the contract.
That provision, that's for elementary, for middle school, high school. It's unfair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. King. Thank you, Mr. Crispin. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 9:18. Thanks to all of you who came tonight or listening online. If you would help us get the chairs picked up, I'm sure maintenance would appreciate it. Thank you very much.